Welcome to the Novel Idea Society in December. Welcome back, actually.
Yeah.
So I was talking about this today. You came for Valencia and Valentine. Was that
5 years ago,
June or July of 2019, 2018?
2019. Yeah.
And we went to a senior's home.
Yeah.
And we had the loveliest group of people. And we talked about OCD extensively for an evening. Tonight, we are not talking extensively about OCD, but we can talk about the writing process in her other books because 5 years and 3 books later. So that's something. This is Suzy Krause, the author of, I think we've been here before. We have people in the room. We have people online. Thank you for being here in this ridiculous weather December snowstorm. Apologies for my lack of voice. This is actually an improvement. Don't get sick. Don't get sick, guys. It's 0 stars. This book has been very successful for you already.
Doing okay.
Where did the idea for I think we've been here before come from?
A few places. First was from a dream that I kept having. I had this recurring dream for a long time, that the world was ending. And it was one of those dreams that, like, in the dream, we all died, the whole world was over. But I would always wake up from that dream. You know, when you have those dreams where you wake up and you're like, oh, I wish I could climb back into that dream. It was so cozy, like weirdly cozy.
Your
And
apocalyptic dreams
I
are
know.
cozy.
It was really weird. And I'm like an anxious person and I'm not like a horror book reader or anything like that. So it was like really off brand for me for it to be like this cozy thing. And then I was like, this feels like a challenge. Like, could I write a book that kind of like is about the end of the world, but has that same kind of like cozy feel to it that I had in this dream?
So when you wrote Valencia and Valentine, that was a 2-book deal, right?
Mhm.
So did you have to pitch this cozy apocalypse as
Yes.
a totally different deal to your publisher?
Yes.
How'd that go?
They didn't like it at first. They said, I was like, this is different than what you usually publish, and it's different from what I usually write. And publishers hate that when you come to them with that. They're
You're like,
instantly
so I
like,
have an
"Yep,
idea.
yep, I have an idea." And I was like, it's gonna be like, and they really like wanted to brand me as being very like women's fiction and like upbeat and like cozy, like maybe a romance in there. And I was like, this is gonna be like that. There's gonna be like some romance and it's gonna be cozy and upbeat, but like everyone does die at the end. But like, and she was like, "Oh, I don't think we can swing that. Like, could you make it so that the world doesn't end?" And I was like, no, it hinges, like the plot hinges on like the world has to end. And so she had to go back to the ed board and like fight for it, and she got it for me. So that
So
was
was
great.
this another 2-book deal or was
No, this
this
was
is
a one.
okay.
Mhm.
So how has your writing process changed since Valencia and Valentine?
Not very much. It's like getting more and more chaotic, really. I thought it would get I thought I would like get a system going or like have some kind of a, yeah, process of some kind, but I just don't have any process at all. I just write.
But you do have a process. What is your
Kind of.
process?
It's just that I just write and write and write and then I write, go back and rewrite and rewrite and rewrite, and there's no process. It's really sad.
But so you fly by the seat of your pants.
Yes.
But you have a process for where you write and how
Yeah,
you write. So you do have a process.
I guess. I need to have coffee, usually like at my kitchen table when my kids are at school. Yeah.
And coffee shops.
Coffee shops, lots of coffee shops. Yeah.
Okay, so the people in this book are all interconnected in some way, shape, or form. Are they based off of particular humans you know in real life?
Some of them loosely. So it's like set in a small town, and I grew up in Frontier, Saskatchewan. There's like 200 people there. It's very small. So it's based on like that kind of person that you would find in Frontier, just like a really small town farmer type people. Yeah. Tried not to like put real people in the books because
Mhm.
people get weird about that. But
The names.
yes.
How did you choose the names? Because you went like old timey.
Yeah, just a lot of Norwegian names. Because
Yes.
Frontier, where I grew up, everyone's Norwegian, like everybody.
Because it has like Frederick Bachman vibes
Yeah,
of the names.
it's true because he's Scandinavian
Yes.
too. So yeah,
Is that something that you've written in other books and I haven't noticed, or is this particular to this
I
one?
think it's more particular to this one because it's set in a little Norwegian town. So everyone, where I grew up, everyone had very Norwegian names, and I couldn't use those names because no one would like be able to pronounce them. They're like Kirsty, Kjersti, or like there's a lot of really tricky Norwegian names. So I tried to use
Mhm.
pronounceable Norwegian names.
So how has this changed from when you first started writing it? What plot points
Oh man.
changed?
So the first time through that I wrote it, it was just a very straightforward, it was just going to be about a family on a farm waiting for the world to end. It was just a very straightforward, like no speculative fiction elements, nothing trippy or mind bending or anything like that. So I wrote it straight through, and then I was like, I think that I've like set myself up for some weirdness. I just like noticed when I was reading it through on my second round through, and then I read an article. I don't know how spoilery I'm.
No, you can be as
Yeah.
spoilery as you like. The assumption is they've read it, and if they haven't,
That's their
well,
problem.
you know now. Well, you already told them everyone dies at the end,
That's
so.
true. But I actually found this. So I have this couple at the very beginning of the book
Mhm.
who kind of like have this really interesting connection. They like feel like they've met each other before.
Yes.
And when I first started writing that, it was kind of more based on me and my husband. Like when I met him, I was like, I feel like I'm going to end up with you. I feel like I've known you forever, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
So it was going to be like that. But I got to the end of the book and I found this article that describes what happens to a person's brain right before they die. That it like scientists were studying this man. They had him all hooked up, his brain waves to this machine, and he died during this study. So they were actually able to see what happened in his brain the moment that he died and the moment after, and they were able to actually like categorically say like, wow, his life flashed before his eyes right before he died. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. And then I was thinking like, what if when you get to the end of your life and your life flashes before your eyes, what if that just keeps repeating and like, you get to the end of the replay and it goes back and it flashes before your eyes again and again and again and again. I was like, that's an interesting concept. And because brains are faulty and we never remember things as they actually are,
Mhm.
I was like, the replays would never be perfect. So it would be glitchy and weird. And every time you replayed it, you would probably make it a little bit better
Mhm.
because, because you want to believe that your life is better than it was. So then I was like, that could actually explain why this couple feels that they've known each other when they first meet because they actually have already met and already been in love. And so then I went back to the beginning of the book and started writing with that kind of framework of it, and it worked out pretty well.
So let's talk about the end of the book. Because when I finished it, and I finished it last night, you get to the end. Let's go to the end, shall we? And it's basically what you say, where, it's the beginning of the same as last time, but better, just the tiniest bit better. And I feel like it broke my brain a little bit. That like, it's like, do I go back to the beginning of the book? Do I read it again? Is it going to be different? So, how did you decide how they were all going to die at the end without having like a big flash of light and then just like a blank page?
Yeah, that was really, it was difficult. And I originally was going to put it so that there was like a big flash of light at the beginning of the book. And then I was like, will that give it away? I don't know. There's just a lot of, I just rewrote the ending over and over and over again until it felt like that was actually the ending. It's not a very good answer to that question, but there have
Where
been,
did it start? Like, how did you? Because I was thinking about that as we're getting to it, and it's like the sky's really bright and it's turning certain colors, and it's like they've come to the conclusion that this is going to happen. But how do you write the moment someone dies when it's everyone?
yeah.
And it's not cancer, it's not a heart attack, it's not something that you can go into the books and say this is exactly what happens when somebody dies. So where did you start with the end of the world versus where you ended up?
Well,
Getting a little bit better every time.
oh, that's a really hard question to answer because I wrote that last chapter just like so many times because you're right, it's just a hard thing to write. You're like, do you make it really obvious and really clinical and very like, this is what happened, or do you be really vague and make a whole bunch of people upset that it's too vague? Like, yeah, I just rewrote it until it was like that feels like the right ending. I
So
don't
when
know.
you finished your final draft, in your
Mhm.
version of final draft, what did your editor make you change?
She actually, I had a lot, so the cat, I had a lot more of that kind of stuff.
Okay,
in
let's
it.
talk about the
Yeah.
cat because I noticed it that I was like, how is the cat in two places at once? Like, how is the cat in Berlin
Mhm.
and also at home with her parents? I swear she said she took her cat, but then the cat was still there. But I didn't overthink it. It was like, again, sort of breaking my brain. And then I was on Goodreads marking off my books because I'm a psycho and track everything I read. And I noticed a note that you wrote because I'm not the only one that was like, huh, what's up with this cat? So let's talk about the cat.
Yeah. Yeah, because people were starting to read just the first, because in the second chapter the cat is on the farm, and then in the third chapter the cat's in Berlin. So people were reading that, and then they were stopping reading, and they were sending me an email and saying, "You have an editing error in your book." And I was like, "Oh, you're supposed to keep reading." Like, so I put this thing on Goodreads that explains it, and that says like it's a spoiler. So if you want to spoil this for yourself, you can. But yeah, the cat is just supposed to kind of be the tip so that when you read at the end and you read that part at the end where Marlen explains the whole book repeating itself over and over and over again, the cat is supposed to be a like an affirmation that he's right, that he got his theory is right. So the cat is in Berlin with Nora because she remembers it being in Berlin with her because she loved the cat. So of course, when she remembers her life, she would remember that she took the cat with her.
Mhm.
And her mom remembers keeping the cat with her because the cat is representative of Nora. So in her memory, she keeps the cat because that's comforting to her. So everyone's remembering it differently, but they're all remembering it in a way that makes their life a little bit better. Because our brains want to believe that things are better than they are.
It's like when you, not to get too deep, but when you've broken up with someone or you were in a relationship with them and enough time has gone by and they were kind of an awful person, but you forget all the awful person things and you're like, oh, we had such like, that was an old time in our life and we remember all the happiness of it. But like, if you were to really go back, you'd be like, they were actually not at all a great person for me at all. But your brain like blocks out the bad stuff.
So if you were to like die and have your life flash before your eyes, you might remember that as being like a really beautiful relationship and like, I don't know, maybe.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the book and Marlen. Why prophet? Why did you choose to like frame him in that way?
I just thought it would be like, cause so he in the book he has cancer and
Yes.
he is going to die. So for him,
It's like a race to the finish between him and the end of the book.
and I thought it would be interesting to have someone who had to like work out their own mortality on their own first before everyone else is having to do the same thing. Yeah, so it's kind of like um what's the question?
Mortality,
Oh
Marlen.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so he's working through what it is to die and what it is to know that you're about to die before everyone else has to work through that same thing. So then when everyone else finds out that they're going to die, he's able to kind of come along and kind of help them in their journey to death, I guess.
So Nora's mom has her painting as her like almost like busy work and like her make work project is a distraction technique. I think we all had those in COVID, whether you made bread or picked up a new hobby or whatever it is. What is your make work project for yourself when you're avoiding things?
Writing. Yeah.
That's that's your job.
I know.
But so do you write something else? Like what are you when you say you're writing, do you write short stories? Do you write like are you writing a new book? Okay, so you blog.
So if I get stuck on my book, I blog or I write a different book. I have 3 books that I'm writing right now at the same time.
What this is like reading 3 different books at the same time, but you're trying to make them happen. So what are the storylines of the 3 books without giving them away? Like what are the genres or whatever? Give me the plot points.
So I am actually, I know that you don't like short stories. I'm trying to write short stories.
It's not that I don't like her short stories. It's that I need a longer plot, guys. I can't.
And they're hard, and that's why I'm trying, because I just want to try.
And maybe that's what it is that I was never good at it either. And I've never been good at telling a short story. I am long-winded. I am who I am.
An art that I have not figured out yet, so I'm trying. And then
so like essays or stories or
they're like, so they're kind of like half fiction, half nonfiction stories.
Okay,
It's really hard to, that's a,
okay. Challenge accepted for number one. What's number
Yeah.
two?
number two is like much more speculative fiction. So this was my first endeavor, like trying to write sci-fi
Mhm.
adjacent. And so now I have a book that I'm going full on, and I'm trying to write an actual like full on sci-fi book.
Okay.
And then the third one is just like back to what I have always been writing, like the women's fiction. My publisher would like it kind of thing. Yeah. So they're all very, very different. And when I get bored in one or I get stuck, then I can just zip over here and work on this one, or I can blog.
So how do you, so you need to make money to pay your bills.
Yeah.
So you have your 3 books. You don't do anything else. You write for a living now.
Mhm.
That is your job. How do you plan which book gets finished first out of these 3? Like, do you have, I need to be done by this date so I can pitch it by this date so I can go, like, do you have deadlines imposed on yourself?
Yeah, I have a deadline for, I have the one book we have already pitched to my normal publisher, and the sci-fi one we can't pitch to them because they won't like that one. So I'm trying to get that one ready to pitch in February.
So that one, can you pitch to like a subsidy, like to a different
Yeah, I'll pitch to a
arm of that
different-
publisher kind of thing? Or are you gonna pitch it to somebody totally different?
Probably someone different, yeah. Yeah, my agent will make a sub list and she'll send it off to whoever.
Will
she
you change
has.
your name for that book?
No, they'll probably make me, but I don't want to.
That is the most interesting thing as I dip my, it is, this book club is so wild in that like the number of authors I know now
Mhm.
and enjoy conversing with and stuff. Like I never dreamed that this book club would become what it is. But like Marissa Stapley and oh my God. I can't think of her name, but she writes as Holly Cassidy, but she also writes mysteries.
Oh
and
yeah,
ma-
I know who you're talking about.
she's got 3 names.
Yeah.
McKinnon, last name's McKinnon. I can't, anyways. But the number of people who want to write something other than what they've become known for writing for, and it is just easier to give it a different name. But what's so funny is they still promote it as themselves.
Yeah. Yeah, Marissa, she has like 5.
She's written
10
under
names.
so many different names. Yeah, and she's
Yeah.
still like, it's me, this is my new book, but I'm just writing as this person. And so, I mean, but there's something about you using your own name and wanting to have that under
Mhm.
your umbrella. Hey, but I mean, Stephen King wrote under other names too.
I know, everyone does. It just seems like so much work. You have to rebrand and you have to keep it all, yeah, I don't know.
That's the book we did last month. She only wrote romance and like 60. I went back and counted. She's written 60 romance novels, published them. And then this one was Canadian historical fiction. And so she had to go through the rebrand and she used her real name, but she stuck her middle name in, even though it's still her name.
Mhm.
Like it's Donna Alward Jones. Everything romance had been published under Donna Jones. And she just kind of stuck it in there. And like the books look entirely different. And she had to rebrand her whole website and everything, but it all exists there. So I understand the cost and the mental crunch of that because
Mhm.
being an author is also being an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah, you do so much marketing.
Did you like first book gets published, you're with an Amazon publisher, you fought to get your book in Indigo, like there was a lot of things that you had to learn along the way.
Mhm.
Is it easier now?
No. I feel like I know more of what you have to do to get stuff to happen, but it's still just such a huge machine and you have so little power. And it's just like, yeah, you're kind of at the mercy of so many different people.
How has social media changed your marketing? Because it is crazy how much publishers rely on things like book clubs now. Like before, they didn't have as much interest, but book clubs, TikTok, Instagram, and and random people to help promote their book. Have you fallen into any of those siphons yet?
Yeah, like I try to use social media. The other thing is that like some publishers really care about social media. Like some publishers will not even look at your book if you don't have a big following and that kind of thing. And then some publishers don't care at all. And like same with some agents, like my agency isn't even on Instagram or like TikTok or any of those things. So it depends on what pocket of publishing you fall into, how much they care and how much they even look at your stuff. So my publisher,
You're not writing romantasy, so I think you're okay.
that's the thing. If you're in certain genres, right?
Yeah, it really
If
picks
you
up.
do romance or YA, anything, you need to be on social media. I feel like in my genre, it's like you can be if you want to. You don't have to be.
Do you enjoy it?
I do enjoy it. So I'm on there as much as I enjoy it. And then whenever I feel overwhelmed by it, I'm just like, I don't need to do that as much.
What's the most misunderstood thing about this book? Because it's so mind trippy and everything else, aside from people telling you you have a publishing error.
The cat, yeah.
Is that the biggest
That's
one?
the one. Yeah. Everything else is fine for people, but that cat, like, yeah. And I think it's just because like it's right at the very beginning of the book and people decide that it's publishing error before they've read any else of it. Like they haven't yet gotten the vibe of the book or like picked up on any of the other.
It
little
just
things.
felt very like glitch in the Matrix. Like I was like, I see a cat, but I don't know why I see a cat, but I will just keep reading. It's totally fine. Just keep going. So I
And
never
most
really.
people do that, but there's just a few people.
Okay. I am really bad for monopolizing the conversation. And obviously Susie and I have talked before. Do we have any questions? Let's start in the room. Do any of you three, there's only 3 people in the room with us tonight because there's a snowstorm. Do any of you have questions in the room? Don't be shy, just be loud. Do you have a question?
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
But first of all, I just love the book.
Thank you.
So much fun with it. My wife and I read it out loud to each other and we just binged the whole thing.
That's great.
Cared about these characters and what's gonna happen. And you didn't spoil it for us. We didn't know what the world was gonna end. The world ends. And anyways, wonderful. But so I'm wondering, now that you've got this kind of metaphysical mystery and they're lurking and through the whole thing, kind of like, is reality just a kind of, are we in some kind of reiteration?
Some weird Matrix.
Some kind of like the Matrix kind of thing. But that's just a metaphor for looking at our lives in different ways, experiencing deja vu and memory. That's so cool. But anyways, my question is very specific to one scene in the book where Mr. and Mrs. Schmidt, that would be Nora and Jacob, maybe pronounced differently in German.
Yep.
Or Jakob. Two of them are walking. Her footsteps are loud. His can't be heard. And so I thought, oh, wait a minute, is he a ghost? Is this like Sixth Sense? Is this like, wait a second, he's not real. Is she imagining the whole thing? It's like, no. And I'm like, no, you're reading too much.
Explain.
But then I thought, is this some reiteration afterwards of that relationship that got a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better? And yes, these two did fall in love. The best iteration of them. And died together at the end of time.
Yeah. And in the way that my mind it goes is that they in the real life, the first iteration, he doesn't come back to Canada with her, right? Like they break up and they break up in Germany like at the very beginning, and that's just it. So it's actually kind of a sad story if you think about all the things that went wrong the first time and everyone's just imagining it better and better and better. But I don't know, I guess it's sorry.
That's okay, come on in.
I guess it's sad. It depends on whether you think that the truth, what really happened, is more important or your experience currently is more important. Like,
So when you wrote that his footsteps couldn't be heard, it's because originally he wasn't there.
yeah.
Well, you picked up on
So-
something I didn't even notice. So what else happened originally that I didn't pick up on? What are some of the things that improved that maybe
So like
I didn't notice or other people didn't notice?
So there's actually like a sentence in the end where it kind of tells you, if I could remember where exactly it is. It's when Marlen's telling them about his theory. Let me see if I can find it really quick.
You've only read this book 1,000 times.
Oh, I've read it so many times. Okay, right here. Memory's imperfect, and maybe this is a feature, not a bug. The couple that chose to break up the first time around will get back together. A relationship that fell apart will be fixed. That's Irene and Hank.
Yeah.
A person who was lonely will find family. That's Alfie. A person that was lost will be found. That's Oli. And like erosion, the effects of these tiny changes will eventually wear away at the rough edges of the character's existence until at last it reveals something perfect.
Oh, so it literally tells you.
Yeah. So all those things in the first round, like Oli doesn't come back, he doesn't make it back in time, like those kinds of things. So it's like,
Oh, and Elfie was alone.
yeah,
when
and
she-
Elfie was alone.
Oh, wow.
So
So it could have been a much darker, bleaker story than it was, but it was a little bit better because
yeah,
they realized the first go around didn't work for them.
yeah. So in reality, it's a very sad story, but again, like, does it matter what your current experience is more than what the actual, because you don't experience that ever against. I don't know.
Why Christmas time?
So the original, I was decorating my tree with my family, December 2021, and Last Christmas came on, the song. And I was like, oh, someone should write a book about the apocalypse and like set it at Christmas and then call it Last Christmas. And then Berkeley was like, you should do that. You're an author.
Last Christmas, like literally last Christmas.
Yeah.
Because it's the last Christmas.
So the working title for this book was Last Christmas. And then my editor was like, then people are gonna pigeonhole it as a Christmas book and no one's gonna buy it. So that was smart. She said we should change it.
People buy Christmas books though.
It's true.
Any other questions from in the, or do you have any other astute observations or questions?
In the negative, yes, I do. In the negative universe, what happened to Oli?
He just disappears and no one ever sees him again.
Because
he
he never
runs
makes
away.
it back. He runs away, but then the world ends, so they never see him again.
Yeah, which I definitely heard the latest iteration.
Yeah.
And I also like how, Marlen's book, the whole time I'm wondering, is this Marlen's book?
Yeah.
Oh.
That was, yeah.
So, yeah, I don't know what it was, and it's a book within a book that's very close, very similar plots.
Like I said, your book broke my brain. Any other questions from in the room? Comments? Online, did you guys hear? I guess you probably picked up the gist of that based on her answer. Colleen, you have unmuted yourself. Do you have a question?
No, I missed that last little bit that he was talking about Marlen's book.
Oh, he said he wondered if this was Marlen's book, that it was a book within
Oh,
a
yeah.
book, and that this was the book that Marlen wrote. Which again, why I said this book, like when you think about it, it reminds
does.
me of is it Interstellar?
Yeah, yeah.
Is it Interstellar or is it the other one? The one with
One with the library and all the books. That's Interstellar.
yeah, and it's just like it's like the story within the story within the story, the mirror myth, the
Yeah.
mirror, mirror, and you're like, what's the actual story? Colleen, do you have a question since you happen to be unmuted?
I don't have a question. I just thought, regardless of all of the mind-bending parts of the book, I just loved reading it. It was like I read it in about a day and a half. I just didn't want to put it down. I loved all the characters. I thought I believed in all of them. I wanted to know what happened to them. And now I definitely, I don't want to know that sad stuff. And you really cared about them. And so I thought that was really well done. And I thought, I wasn't thinking memory. I was thinking that it was going to be there was going to be another iteration of the world. So the world just keeps kind of dying and coming back. And every time you have the possibility of it being a bit better. But now I know. And I thought maybe the
It's
cat,
all in your head, and you get to process that tonight.
anyway, I thought it was great. I liked it.
Thank you so much.
Any other questions online? There's lots of you. Just unmute yourself if you have a question or a comment.
I picked up on the cat right away. And I kind of thought, oh, we're on a different time continuum here, was the first thing I thought, because the cat's in Germany and the cat's in Canada and the cat's at the neighbors. And that was interesting. Some of the themes near the end broke me a little bit. And the character, the grandpa and the son and the arcade, that was, like I say, that kind of just hit home a little bit with my life and some things. And I also thought Marlen's book was going to turn out to be the story too. when he brought out the book and everything. I thought, oh, this is all going to come first circle. And I was kind of hoping they weren't all going to die in the end, but I kind of knew they were going to.
You get to the point where you're like, there's only so many pages left.
Yeah.
And they're sitting in the basement, and I'm like, well, maybe. And I think it's because we're so used to stories with happy endings, where it's
Yeah.
just like, oh, it wasn't that, it was just some crazy storm and they're fine. But
And
this is still kind of a happy ending.
Well,
and
because
there's
everyone dies anyway.
Oops. Go ahead.
We are all going to die. And so maybe it's nicer to all die together. And that's the one thing that I kept thinking throughout the book was how we live as though we're not going to die until we're fate. So he had the cancer diagnosis. So he, that's different. But for most people, but really the only thing that is ever really going to happen to everybody is we're all going to die. And so I really liked the way they were all kind of came together and were able to, it ended while they were together. So instead of being alone, and I don't know. Yeah.
I had one review on Amazon. Somebody said, like, I picked up this book, I read a few pages, and then I realized that the world was going to end at the end. And so they didn't finish the book because they were like, what's the point in reading this book if everyone dies at the end? And I was like, what a weird attitude, because everyone does. Like, that's what I originally thought. I was like, everyone dies. Like,
Mhm.
what's the point of anything if it doesn't matter just because you're going to die at the end? Like, and if some people do know when they're going to die, and it changes things, but it doesn't make your life less valuable, and it doesn't make what you do less valuable.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Karen, were you going to say something else?
Well, I also felt a lot of commonalities with the COVID years of just our lives instantly being so different, walking into grocery stores and not being able to get things, stores just closing up, conspiracy theories flying around everywhere. I was kind of wondering if some of that kind of inspired you for some of your thoughts with this.
Absolutely. I think a lot of books these days that are being written are like people working through COVID and conspiracy theories and strains with family and all that kind of stuff. And I know this book for me was definitely that.
When you talked about how priorities change when you know you're going to die. Marlen knew that. He started writing his book. And the do-over. The thought of having the do-over, that sometimes we don't get it right with that. What made you, particularly when you think about like Nora being in Germany and maybe not being able to get home before that even happens, how did you decide who was going to get it right and who wasn't? Or did you just assume that we all kind of screw it up the first time?
Yeah, I think that was kind of the goal, was just to make it like the first time they all, like, everyone got it wrong and nothing went right and Nora couldn't get home and the relationships didn't get mended. But like, I think that the fact that they get it more and more right each time just shows that everyone knows where they went wrong and they know what's important. And so even if they didn't have time to get it right in the first one, like, everyone wants to get it right, and they all love each other so much that, like, even if they messed up the first time, even if it just happened in their brains, they all made it right. You know what I mean?
And when you compare that back to COVID times,
Yeah.
because I think, not that we want to do it over, but I think if we had to do it over,
Yeah.
I think some people would do things differently.
Mhm.
And they would, and they also probably also remember it differently. Let's be real.
Yes.
Like, remember the things they did, remember the things they didn't do, and remember that time very differently. And in like the grand scheme of your life, it was a very short period of time. But when you're in the thick of it, it doesn't feel that way. And I think in terms of the pandemic, there are some people who got it wrong the first time and would probably blur the edges a little on their story if they had the opportunity. Not that we want to do that again.
Well, yeah, and I think with COVID and with this, it's all like you're acting in a place of such fear. Like, we were all You know,
Mhm.
you don't act your best when you are
Terrified.
really, really scared. Yeah. So like even those of us who maybe wouldn't change our viewpoints on things, maybe we would be a little softer with people, or maybe we would, I don't know. Yeah, that maybe we wouldn't do everything differently, but I know that I probably would have been a little less like arrogant or a little less quick to like jump down people's throats and say like this is the right thing, or I probably would have prioritized relationship over being right. a lot
The
of the
kind,
time.
the, like Donna last month had a line in her book that said kindness costs nothing.
Yeah.
And I think about that a lot as just like a short, like anecdote for life, is that it really doesn't cost anything to be kind. And I think that you see that in this book. Um, who was Alfie kind of modeled after, aside from like Scad?
So actually my favorite grocery store cashier at my grocery store that I go to is her name is Elfie. And she's like just the most like she's like a ray of sunshine. And whenever I go there, I always go in her checkout and she's
Her
just like,
regular.
yeah. And she knows everyone. She like knows everyone's names. When my kids aren't with me, she's like, where are your kids? And like I just loved her so much. So I put her in the book as like a
Does she know
character
she's
that
in the
I
book?
know.
Well,
Every once in a while I go in with this in my backpack and I'm like, maybe I should just like give it to Elfie and be like, you're Elfie. But I don't want to because I'm scared that she won't like her or something, or yeah,
oh, that's so
I don't
sweet. Any other questions for Susie? We've still got a little bit of time.
Did,
I am trying to keep us to
sorry,
time. No, go ahead.
did the brother who dies, the son, did I miss how did he die? Like, the grandpa thinks that Ole's the son. But then he realizes he's not, and that he goes through that when they were all at the arcade or whatever, he was 11. And anyway, you never really know what happened to him, or do you?
So how did
Did I
that
miss
How
that?
did dead? Yeah, yeah.
yeah, I never actually like go into that. I think I
Okay.
did go into that in a rough copy that got cut. When I edited this book with my editor, we cut 30,000 words because
Girl.
yeah.
That's
So
a lot.
so
So how many is it finished?
it's like 75,000 words
So
maybe.
you cut almost half the book.
Yeah, lots of it. And because I did give everyone a lot of backstory, and my editor was like, maybe people don't need to know what actually happened to his grandson. Like, you just know that he died young.
So what happened?
In an earlier draft, he just got a what's the word? Flu. He just got a flu, and
Oh,
yeah, just got sick.
just the flu.
Yeah.
I mean, out of all the other dramatic things that happen, he just gets the flu,
I
which
just-
can be very dramatic to
yeah,
be.
you can die.
It's not just the
Flu.
flu. Yes? Oh, yeah, you're correct. Oh, no, Colleen, I sort of want to know what happened to the brother. How did he die? I missed that. I probably should have left the chat open. Sorry, Colleen. Any other questions?
Yeah, I got a couple of comments.
Oh, go ahead.
One is, that I kind of want to know what happened to the brother too. It's such a, like, we actually cared so much about these characters, even though it's clearly fiction, which.
Is it though?
But anyway, they're so well painted that we just, yeah, we want to ask you questions like, well, what really happened? Let me tell you what happened. It's an old draft or something, but what was the flu? The other thing I wanted to say is that it's really funny. Like, there are bits of writing that are hilarious and got us just bit to stop and good luck.
He said it's very funny for those of you who can't hear online, and Susie's not going to toot her own horn, but
It operates on many levels. Talk about all the deep stuff and the touching stuff, but it's also just entertaining.
Thank you.
Have you read any of her books before? Okay, well, lucky for you, there's two others. Do you have any questions in the room? No? Comments? I'm just surprised that I mean,
Oh, there's a,
I also wondered about the mural in Berlin and the snowflakes.
oh, a cool thing about the mural in Berlin.
She's excited. Good question, Colleen.
Okay, so I got an email this morning from a woman who lives in Berlin, and she was like,
No.
"Mhm." And she was like, "Oh my goodness, I picked up your book. I was reading it, and I realized that this book is set in my neighborhood, and that this mural is in the book." And I was like, "I didn't set this book in a real neighborhood in Berlin. Like I made it up." Like,
Did she send you a picture?
she did, but she recognized this mural and she said it was exactly where you said it was in the book. And like when they walk around and she like recognized all the little places. And I was like, I didn't like I used Google Maps a little bit to like, but she sent me a picture of this mural and like
Did you get
it
goosebumps?
has the like blue, like you know, I like describe in the book that she has like blue paint on her forehead, and in the mural she has blue paint on her forehead. And then she was like, have you ever lived here? And I was like, no, I use Google Maps.
Did you get
But
goosebumps?
yeah, it was so weird. So that was fun. But yeah, I just made up the mural completely.
Oh, that's weird. Creepy. Is it made up? Is it real?
Maybe I went there in my life and I
Maybe it was part of your weird apocalyptic dream that you had over and
yeah,
over,
it could be.
or in a previous life. You get real deep here. Wow. What about the snowflakes?
Oh, and that was just another one of those. It's like the cat where Irene teaches Jacob at the very end of the book how to make snowflakes. And then then in his next iteration of the life, he already knows how to make snowflakes. But originally it was Irene who taught him. And yeah, and that's why.
Okay, so did you have a flow chart to keep track of what people knew
I
and
should
didn't
have.
know?
That would have been really helpful.
Because that, like, I know you know this now, but as you're writing it, going back and putting those things in would be really hard.
Yeah, it was chaos. But I just tried to keep it going.
So who do you show your early drafts to?
I have a couple of friends who read early drafts, but mostly it just goes straight to my editor. And then I have a developmental editor who helps me also. So she's wonderful. Her name's Laura. Great. So sometimes she'll be like, this is inconsistent. And yeah, she's great.
What are those conversations like with your editors where are they kind
Yeah.
or are they like,
Yeah. Well,
and is it red pen?
yeah, like Laura is like she's my developmental editor, so she's concerned with like big picture stuff, and she's really good at just being like asking lots of questions and being like, oh, did you realize that this is inconsistent, or did you realize whatever? And then Alicia is my other editor, and she's much more like, you need to cut this, 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 and I just trust both of them so much that I just
Do they ever work together?
So they both read my first draft, and then they separately came up with notes, and then they compared them together and then gave them to me all at once.
What was that first meeting like?
It's always really overwhelming. They send me over like an edit letter. It's like 7 pages long, and it's like, these are the things we liked. These are the things you probably need to cut. These are the things we didn't understand. And there was a lot of things in that first draft. It was a very messy, weird draft. So we did have to cut a lot of stuff. And
What didn't
fix
they
a lot of
understand the
stuff.
most in the beginning that you really had to clarify?
I think I didn't do as good of a job of like making things like the cat. I had a lot more things like the cat. There's a lot of those stuff and about that stuff. And my editor said you get to pick like 4 magical things, and then you have to cut all of the other things. So I picked like the cat, the necklace, the
Which necklace?
snowflakes. So Hilda has this heart necklace
Yes.
that she gets from Nora when Nora comes back from Berlin.
Yes.
She steals it from the little gift shop.
Mm-hmm.
And then, but at the beginning of the book, she's wearing it. And then halfway through the book, she loses it. And then she's gifted it at the end of the book. So it's kind of one of those things where like her memory is not quite tracking where the necklace is.
Right.
So they let me keep that throughout the book,
This is very technical.
I guess.
You didn't set out to write a very technical book, did you?
No, it was very straightforward, the first draft, and then it just kept getting,
So is your sci-fi one that you're working on, is it technical as well?
yeah,
And
it's
do you
really
find it
fun.
just like scratches a different part of your brain?
Yeah. I'm having a lot of fun.
Does your husband weigh in on any of these characters, or are you just in your own little
No,
land?
I don't let him read anything until he got to read this version.
Oh, the finished version.
Yeah.
Does that bug him?
I don't think so. He's so chill. I wouldn't know if it did bug him.
Okay, that is crazy.
Giving that first draft to your editors, are they gonna be like, no, this is no good, it's not gonna.
Yeah.
How's your imposter syndrome?
Yeah. I get so nervous every time. Yeah, I like, and every time whenever I like, because this one I sent it to my agent first, and she emailed back quite quickly and was like, "This is good, Suzy." And I cried and cried and cried, and then she sent it to the editor, and I like was like waiting with bated breath. And the thing with publishers, like with that publisher, is they get it and then they have to read it, and then they get some other people at the publishing house to read it too, and then they take it to the ed board to like try and pitch it to the whole publishing house as a whole. And so it takes forever, and they have these meetings and they have to like show like how much money they think it'll make, and so how much they want to pay as an advance, all this stuff. And so you're just waiting, and it took like, I want to say like it took a few months where I just had to like sit there, and I would like pull up that email from my agent that said like, "This is good, Suzy." She knows how to talk to me. She's always like, "You're fine." And I had to just keep reading that email over and over and over again until they finally sent me the offer. And then I was like, okay, because it's just so nerve-wracking every time.
How quickly do your editors actually read your books, contrary to what the movies would tell us?
Mine, it has changed based on her career. Like when I first came on board at this publishing house, she was brand new and I was her first author.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah. So she read my book like really fast. And I was like, oh, the movies are right. Like this is how publishing is. They just read your book like the second they get it, and then they send you edits the next day and they're so excited. And then
I'm just like, I read quick, but I cannot finish books as quickly as they do in the movies.
but yeah, and then now she quickly became like the head editor of that publishing imprint, but then also of two other imprints, and so then she got bogged down. So now it's slower, but okay.
But she still keeps you as her, she hasn't
Yeah.
let you go to anybody else type thing.
Well, and she recently got snatched up by another publishing house, so now she's not my
Uh-oh.
publisher or my editor.
Is that where you're going to send your sci-fi book?
She does romance now?
Well, I guess you're writing a romance
I
novel.
guess so. We'll just make someone fall in love. Just
In
so I
the
can
in the
send it to
sci-fi
Alicia.
novel.
Yeah, and it's I can get like derailed on research, and I just love researching too. So sometimes I'll start researching things that have nothing to do with the book because it takes me off on a rabbit trail. So it's really hard to say how much useful research I actually do. Like with this book, I had to think of a way to end the world that just like hadn't been done a million times. So then I had to like, I was researching like what all movies have been made about the world ending, and like how did each of the movies, like comets and all these things. And then I had to research like possible ways the world could end, and like how can I do it differently.
Your Google history must be fun.
It's a trip. And then I had to do a lot of research about like quantum entanglement, which is really fun. I like that. Yeah. Just fun.
Anybody else? We're coming up close on the end of our time here. So if you have a question, or don't be shy, feel free to toot her horn or ask a question.
You had mentioned four sort of quasi supernatural mysteries they allowed you.
Oh yeah, I interrupted you because the necklace threw me off.
Cat
What
the
are the four?
necklace. What else did I
Snowflake.
Snowflakes. And then Elfie, she appears like in a bunch of places throughout the book. And that's what I don't think a lot of people have noticed. Like Nora keeps meeting women who have gray hair and are kind. And that's Elfie. She's in the airport. She's in the little shop that they go and steal from. She's reading a book in that scene because Elfie in real life always talks about how she'd never have time to sit down and read a book. So I have her in that little store reading a book. I just like, and she's a flight attendant in the airport.
With the sore feet.
Yeah. Yeah. So they let me put her everywhere. And I had originally named her. She keeps saying like, "Hi, I'm Elfie." And then they were like, you can't say that. If people pick up that it's Elfie, they can pick it up for themselves. But
Don't make it too
yeah,
obvious.
you can't say that she's Elfie. But she's there. I think she's in like 4 places. throughout the book.
Oh, neat. I
So
didn't
yeah,
pick
it's
up on
an
that
I
either.
think you should not tell any,
Yeah, that's interesting.
just leave that. Super. I would have picked that. Now
Okay.
you're reading it. Yeah.
It's got that like Sixth Sense vibe to it though, where you like read a whole story and you think one thing's gonna happen, and then you get to the end and you're like, I didn't see that. And you're like, do I have to go back? And then you see the nuggets are there, but depending on if you pick them up or not.
And there might be some other nuggets that my editor didn't find, like the craft closet, that she
Oh,
finds. in-
Petra's,
yeah,
yeah.
and then that's also Irene's craft closet. There's a few little things like that.
Oh, so she goes into a room and it's actually her.
Yeah. So
Uh.
there's little things that my editor didn't find, and I was like, I'm not gonna say anything if she doesn't say anything. So there's
You're
maybe
like, she gave me
more.
4, but I have actually 5 or 6, but
Yeah.
I'm not gonna tell them that I got away with it.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna do a few more questions and then we will slowly wrap this up and then you can sign some books if you want or whatever. Okay. What is the best book you've read lately?
Oh, I just finished reading David Nichols, his new one, You Are Here.
Okay.
Have you read that?
No,
Have you read any of his books?
no.
One Day.
Oh, one day I have read
Yes.
one day, yes.
Yeah. I just love him so much. His writing is just so funny. He's just great. That book is so good.
Um, who else can lit wise should people be reading?
Oh,
You have the author community in this country is wild. Now that I see how it works and how entangled, particularly the women are, it's crazy.
Mhm.
But if you were to recommend some authors who may or may not be your friends, who would you suggest as we go into the Christmas season of hibernation?
Oh man, Marissa Stapley is so great, and she writes in all of the genres. So she writes romance, and she writes thrillers, and she writes. Her recent one came out on the same day as mine.
Lightning Bottles?
Lightning Bottles, yeah, and it's about like the '90s grunge scene.
Yes, so when I talked to her last, she was doing research for that one and she said it
Yes.
was really fun.
Yeah, it's so good. So I really enjoy that. Yeah, when I went to Toronto to do my thing with her, I met her and Carrie Clare, who writes really, really beautiful fiction, and Sam Bailey, who writes thrillers.
Mhm.
Who else did I meet that trip? There's just so many. There's so many, and they all live in Toronto. And I
Mhm.
just wish I could.
They have their own little like friendly writers cult
Mhm.
and they all like love each other and share each other's books and blurb each other's books. And
Mhm.
you're just here in the middle of the prairies waiting for the world to end.
Yep. But Marissa's coming here.
I didn't know that. For which?
She's coming to visit me.
Oh, well, we'll have to, I'm gonna have to make that work so that I can, yes, because last time I was in Toronto, she was not,
Yeah.
because we tried to have coffee and it didn't work out.
Yeah,
Well, that's fun. I didn't know that.
yeah.
What else was I gonna ask you? Um, oh my God, my brain. Oh, when you're writing, are you a music or a
Yes.
silence person?
Music.
So what do you listen to when you're writing a book? Like, is this like an REM end of the world as we know it type vibe? Or like,
I do have a playlist that I made. It's on Spotify.
I didn't know that.
Mhm.
And is it everything you listened to while you were writing, or is it just what you think would work with the book?
It's a lot of songs that I listened to while I was writing, and then a lot of songs that there's a bunch of songs that I found like after I wrote it that like really fit with it really well. Like the lyrics are very close, kind of spookily close. So
Share
yeah.
that with the Facebook group.
Yeah.
If you can.
I did a blog post about it. So I can share that.
TV adaptation. I knew there was
Yes.
something I wanted to get to. I was like, there's a thing in my brain. It is not coming out of my mouth. Tell us about the TV adaptation because this was adapted before the book came out.
Yeah.
So how did that work?
It's just being optioned right now. So it's a producer who he's also an author, and he had asked me to blurb his book.
Mhm.
And I said yes. And then he was like, oh, if I can ever return the favor. And I was like, oh, I have a book coming out, so I'll send it to you and you can blurb it. And so he read it, and then he sent me an email, and it was just like, I love the book. Here's my blurb. Also, I'm a movie producer. Can I option this? And I was like, yes. So he currently just has the rights to it, and he's shopping it out and sending it to actors and actresses and studios. And
So do you see this as a movie or as a TV show? Or if like you had
he's
your,
he's thinking limited series.
okay,
is
so like
what
6, 8
yeah.
episodes kind of thing.
Mhm.
So who plays the characters in your perfect world?
Oh, it's like kind of heartbreaking because I had some characters like that I pictured and they've actually read it and they already turned it down. So it's like, so I probably shouldn't even say their names then. I'm not supposed to say who's read it, but
Okay, well, just tell me who your perfect characters would be. Like when you were writing it, who was in your head?
so I
Regardless of if like they've read it or have been asked or not, but when you're
Yes.
writing it and you see, because you see
Mhm.
the fact that people don't hear voices when they read, there's some people that don't hear voices and don't see people, blows my mind. But anyway, who did you see in your head when you were writing them?
So John Krasinski and his wife, I pictured them being like Marlen and Hilda.
Cute.
Yeah,
Okay.
right?
Oh, I don't want him to get cancer. It's so sad.
Yeah.
Okay, and then who would
Um
be Mr. and Mrs. Schmidt?
and I don't know any younger actors. I'm so bad at I'm like, who's 20? Like
They don't have to be 20, they just have to look 20.
it's true. But like who even looks 20? I don't know. I'm only familiar with older actors. So
I have no solutions. I may have the same problem.
yeah. Because in my brain, I'm like, oh, all of the actors that I know are like 20. And then I'm like, oh, actually, they're like 50.
Because they were 20 when we were young.
Yeah.
What about Elfie?
Sophie? I think like,
The lady in the grocery store?
I know. She's the only one I picture.
Okay, that's fine. That's totally
I'll just
fine.
ask her if she wants to be in a movie.
And then who else are we missing here? We've got Irene.
Irene, yeah. Oh, who did I think of for her? I had some.
Hilda and Marlen. I'm just going through to see who I'm missing here. Oh my God, who's playing your conspiracy theorist that drops everything in the mailboxes?
That person's
Irene.
Never, yeah.
Okay, because Irene and Hilda are sisters.
Hmm.
So it would have to be someone who looks like
Yeah,
Emily Blunt.
Who looks like Emily Blunt.
Okay, now we're like deep diving this and people are like, I don't care. This is fine. We just watched the movie. Okay. And while we're talking on that, give me your top 3 bingeable series or movies for the holidays as we go into this, because you are writing and reading all of the things. So what are good things that you've read or that you've watched lately? And it doesn't have to be smart. Please don't act like this is like that. It does not have to be like,
Hey, right now we're binging Frasier.
okay, the new one or the old
No,
one?
the old one.
Okay.
Over and over. And then also there's this one on CBC Gem, The Gold. Have you watched this?
Not yet, no.
It's
I
very
shouldn't
good.
admit that, but no, not yet.
It's very
It's
good.
new. That one's
Mhm.
new.
It's like it's based on a true story about a gold heist that took place in
Oh,
like
yes,
the
yes, yes,
70s.
yes.
Yeah, it's really good.
Okay.
I like it. And then that's all we're watching right now. It's just Frasier and The Gold.
Are you 900? Gold heists and Frasier. Okay. There's the inspiration. Okay. Any final questions online for Suzy before we hang up and get her to sign books and stuff? Final thoughts, questions, concerns, conundrums? Okay. Thank you so much for doing this again. And when you write a different book of a different genre, we'll bring you back for that.
Cool.
Sound
Great.
good?
Maybe there won't be a snowstorm.